thanks for joining us on this week's episode of Wise Content Creates Wealth. You've heard that content is king. Well, wise content rules the world. This podcast is about understanding how you can make and utilize wise content to improve your company's bottom line. I am Joseph Franklin McElroy, and I am a marketing technology expert who has built a multi-million-dollar company, and I'm also an award-winning content producer. My company is Galileo Tech Media, and we're a leader in providing wise content and smart SEO. Our wise content is all types of content that incorporates semantic science, behavioral science, AI, and data to make content that converts better and gets better rankings in the search engines. So in a few minutes, we'll be talking to Jess Novak, the Director of Strategic Accounts, Global Agency Partners at BRIGHTEDGE. BRIGHTEDGE is an enterprise tool we use at Galileo and does wonderful things for our content. And I mentioned it a couple weeks ago, so it should come no surprise that I wanted to bring them on here. And I'll be introducing Jess in a second. But first, some news. So in the last month, Google has made a search advance that they announced that is important for content marketing and for search engine optimization. And it's called passage ranking. And what does that mean? So let me read the quote that they gave you from the Google product teams, and it'll sort of give you an idea. So it's a very specific searches can be the hardest to get right, since sometimes the single sentence that answers your question might be buried deep within a web page. We, that being Google, recently made a breakthrough in ranking and now are able to not just index pages, but in individual passages from pages. Now this is seems somewhat small, but I think it's like a lightning bolt, because now they're not only ranking pages for the content, they're ranking passages within pages, and specific sections within pages that best matches a user intent and best answers their question. So this is really focused on the long tail, the questions that people might have, or very specific, long, involved searches. Google justified it by saying that better understanding the relevancy of specific passages, and not just the overall page, we can find that needle in a haystack information you're looking for. And then here's another big part from them, is that this technology will improve about 7% of search queries across all languages as they roll it out globally. Well, if you think 7% is not much, I mean, we're talking about billions and trillions of searches here. It's going to be huge in terms of its impact. So their crawlers are getting smarter and understanding the content within our pages and the context within our pages, and finding the correct answer that they want to deliver to people. So so it's pretty important to understand, what are we going to do about it? And I have some basic ideas. What are we going to do about it? Well, the first thing we're going to need to do is structure our content to answer specific queries. Now, if you've been doing things like schema and FAQ schema, you're probably maybe doing a little bit of this, but it becomes important to do it even more. So you want to structure your content around answering questions. And then you want to use related terms and concepts within your content. Talk about the topics and subtopics and other kinds of queries that make sense with your content. So you want to have a more holistic and complete answer in your content, so that it can maybe even show up for multiple passages. And then you need to have a good content structure. And that means use your heading tags appropriately. Give it a real structure. H1 at the top with the title, then H2s and 3s and the other heading tags down through there, in a way that gives it a structure that's, the passages are a question, answer, that it can have a way for the search engines to sort of programmatically identify where this information is. And of course, you should use schema. You should be using schema already. While it's not supposedly a ranking factor, we find it is a great ranking enhancement, and it also gets you better search results. The structure of your search results can be immensely improved, and you can show up in all sorts of different kinds of search when you use schema. And there's some great tools out there, including BrightEdge, to help you do that and understand what you should do. And now that I mentioned BrightEdge, let me introduce Jess Novak. She's a native of Silicon Valley, and she's been with BrightEdge since 2014. And she is now in charge of the strategic relationships and agency partnerships, and is growing that community. And that's how she knows us and helps us understand and use BrightEdge technology better. So hello, Jess.
Hi. Thank you so much for that lovely introduction.
Well, tell me a little bit more about your background. How did you get into the search engine world to begin with?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think like most people who are in the search engine optimization world now, we probably had no intention of ending up in the search engine optimization world. It wasn't really, a thing. It wasn't really as big of a channel, as some of the other more popular, longer running channels like paid media. So, I kind of happened into it like most of the other, most of the other people in our industry did, that kind of found themselves in it within, I don't know, maybe 7 to 10 years ago, that window. I think a lot of us just kind of happened into it. But, earlier in my career, I found myself patterning towards a lot of different roles that really were centered around like grassroots marketing, community building, and that type of work and that type of kind of outreach and growth marketing, not intentionally. And it was just kind of funny that over time these roles, started to kind of manifest themselves. And I think a lot of people probably go through this and as part of their career. And I kind of just started following, different paths, and, being in the heart of the Silicon Valley, I'm very fortunate to be exposed to so many opportunities from a technology perspective. When I was approached by BrightEdge, little over 6.5 years ago already, it was very interesting to see a new enterprise technology on the market for something that I knew was there, something that I use right as a consumer and as somebody who uses the web regularly. Organic search was something that I was vaguely aware of, but I thought it was very interesting that this company was really investing in this channel. They seem to be really the largest player in the market from the enterprise perspective, and today we absolutely are. But I kind of just continued down that path and, grew with the company. The company is now about 3 times the size it was when I started. And, my role has changed, 4 or 5 times, throughout the course of that. But again, kind of going back to the theme of, my natural tendencies kind of being in more grassroots or more community building partnerships. The agency partnerships team was a natural fit for me. And so as we have grown this team and evolved our offering and worked with, partners just like your team at Galileo, it's really been a huge fulfilling experience. Something that I would have never kind of expected, 5-6 years ago when I was first starting this, but, really taking what I love about technology and then meshing that with what I love about community building. That's really kind of how I ended up where I am today.
That's right. Well, I remember 2014, SEO Moz had just started to change themselves to Moz, right? And SEO was sort of like the term was, being depreciated, and people were now doing inbound marketing. So BrightEdge comes in and you focus in on SEO at the beginning, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it was just, when, our founders, Jim, Yu, and Lem Park, they, when they tell the story, really, it was just, they saw the opportunity, for this channel that was largely untapped. They saw Google evolving into how they were serving and kind of the opportunity outside of paying for ads, on Google, and they really just wanted to hone in on it and take advantage of it.
Well, SEO is now hip again, in a sense. I don't know if it'll ever really be hip, but it's
like the nerd side of the marketing world.
But it's a fundamental part of online marketing, which a lot of people don't realize. So what is BrightEdge today?
Yeah, so BrightEdge is an enterprise SEO and content marketing platform. So we are predominantly a data company, right? So the core of our technology is our data set. It's the largest proprietary data set of organic search data across Google that exists. The only third largest index in general, next to Google and Bing themselves. And so, what we approach everything from a data first mentality. And so over the years, we've evolved our offering and really in more in the terms of creating an enterprise solution that makes it easy for our customers and our partners to leverage our data set, make sense of it, interpret the insights, and actually put them into action so they can actually improve and drive revenue. To their businesses. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what we do. We help drive revenue. But overall, we are still fundamentally an enterprise data set.
So, do you have like big server farms, or what? How do you manage to get much data?
Yeah, so we do have a number. We do have a number of different servers that we use. We maintain an index of over 4 billion search topics globally, or in the U.S. alone, and then times 17 different global indexes at that scale. It's something that we invest a lot of money in. It does take a lot of server power in order to maintain it, but that is the core of our business. And so, but we also think it's very important for us to own our own data set, right? For us to be able to control and curate and validate in a way that we feel confident in delivering it to our customer base. So that's why we go that extra length to actually maintain and own our entire data set.
And no floating islands, right? I think at one point Google had a thing where they were going to float server farms out on giant ships out in the ocean, but
not that I'm aware of.
Okay, cool. It might be a place, and then the deck could be a place to go and have a little vacation.
Might be the best place.
All right. When we come back, you're going to tell me what is search, at least from BrightEdge perspective.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC. Uplift, educate, empower.
Hey everybody, it's Tommy D, the nonprofit sector connector, coming at you from my attic. Each week here on talkradio.nyc, I host a program, Philanthropy in Focus. Nonprofits impact us each and every day, and it's my focus to help them amplify their message and tell their story. Listen each week at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time until 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on talkradio.nyc.
Are you a business owner? Do you want to be a business owner? Do you work with business owners? Hi, I'm Stephen Fry, your small and medium-sized business, or SMB guy, and I'm the host of the new show, Always Friday. While I love to have fun on my show, we take those Friday feelings of freedom and clarity to discuss popular topics on the minds of SMBs today. Please join me and my various special guests on Friday at 11 a.m. on talkradio.nyc.
Do you run or are ready to open your own business? Hi, I'm Jeremiah Fox. I've been operating and opening small business for the last 25 years, and I'm the host of the new show, The Entrepreneurial Web. Tune in every Friday at noon Eastern Time for insights and stories on the nuances of running small business right here on Fridays at noon, talkradio.nyc.
I am Joseph Franklin McElroy, host of the new podcast, Wise Content Creates Wealth. It airs on talkradio.nyc every Friday afternoon from 1 p.m. to 2. They say content is king. Well, wise content rules the world. Every episode features tools and tips for content marketing and business people telling the wise content stories of that success. Tune in every Friday from 1 p.m. to 2 on talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Hi, this is Joseph Franklin McElroy back with the Wise Content Creates Wealth podcast, and my guest Jess Nowak. You know, when I say this, I got two podcasts, and I almost said Gateway to the Smokies, which is, you know, I have to watch that. So anyway, you know, when people talk about search, I remember back in the day, long before Google and any of the search engines, search meant you went into a structured database and you were searching through a field to find something, a piece of data, and then all of a sudden search engines came along on the web, and it was all this unstructured data, and it was like, wow, they can do that. That's pretty awesome. But now search means many things to different people. So I'd like to know, what does BRIGHTEDGE hang its hat on?
Yeah, so, you know, to us, search is fundamentally the voice of the customer, right? You know, there is no better way to understand, you know, consumer behavior than to look at search data, right? And, you know, what's really important to know is that, you know, search is the largest marketing channel, and we've done this research year over year, and we've revalidated this data. And search data makes up, you know, search traffic rather makes up just over 51% of all web traffic, you know, today. And it has been the same story for, you know, well over 5-6 years now, since we've kind of been compiling this information. And so if you think about how people interact and, you know, how people solve problems in their everyday life, you know, they're largely doing that, you know, through search. And so the information that we're able to collect as a part of that is incredibly important to, you know, making critical business decisions. And, you know, so when we look at search, when we think about search, there's a couple of different components that are really important, you know, to keep in mind, right? You know, intent, right? Search intent, what are they looking for? What problem are they looking to solve? And relevance. And so you talk about this a lot in this podcast, you know, around, you know, relevant content, right? How do we make sure that we're actually producing the right content for the right audience? We need to know what people are looking for. So we need to have that search data, that voice of the customer data, to understand what it is that they're looking for. You know, how do they describe it, right? What are the other related topics that come up, you know, within similar queries, right? And the more visibility we have into that, the better we can understand what the end intent is, and the better we can really cater content, you know, to that end user and make it, you know, really, you know, content that drives revenue, conversions and revenue, because we don't just want to drive clicks, right? We want to drive quality clicks.
Right. So you guys probably intently pay attention to the paid, you know, RankBrain and the things it does, right? I mean, are you able, like, you know, RankBrain knows that when people search for pizza, most of the time they're just looking for pizza delivery near them and not looking for the recipe of pizza. Is that something that you guys also understand?
Yeah, we actually, yeah, we have, you know, basically identical technology built into our platform that sits on top of our you know, large database, right? And performs, you know, essentially the same kind of RankBrain methodology to surface semantically related topics, you know, based off of actual search intent. That's something that, you know, is really important, right, to our consumers. And it's important to kind of see trends and how that might change over time as well. We saw it earlier in 2020, right, when we when, simple topics like face masks, right? The intent started to change so dramatically throughout the course of 2020, where previously, it was I think the most relevant, topics to face masks were largely in the beauty industry, right? And, largely in treatments, right? Beauty treatments. Right. And, it has, if in terms of kind of the intent for at least the second half of 2020, that intent moved, largely more in the direction of, PPE. Right. And so we see these patterns shift, back and forth all the time. So we do invest a lot in ensuring that we're able to understand, semantic relevance in the same way that Google is looking at it.
Great. So, this podcast is about wise content. So let's get to that meat. All right. So there's a lot of content options out there. You mentioned in talking, things like emails, social media, ebooks, white papers, videos. There's a million different ones. All right. It's a large content battlefield. So how does BrightEdge help us decide which content to create or create wise content?
Yeah, absolutely. So we use a couple of different methodologies to, to determine what would be, good, effective content, right? The first one is, that search data with, the semantic relevance, applied. The second aspect is actually, looking at and understanding, our customers' websites, right? What does their existing content speak to? What direction is their baseline website going, right? Because we want to make sure that we are, creating informed content that's relevant to their business. And, the third thing, and this is what I actually find the most helpful across our customer base, but also just as a consumer, kind of seeing it from this side, is we're using the competitive marketplace, right? The data that we can leverage across who is Google actually serving in these top performing positions, right? And what other content do they have across their site that's likely contributing to it? So we look at competitive patterns, and that's a huge piece of how we inform what smart or wise content will look like, right? We want to know who is actually being rewarded and what are the patterns across those pages that are being rewarded.
Cool. When we had a recent client that we used BrightEdge on, and in the discovery of content, we discovered that the share of voice, which is a metric that you guys put together, which is really great for people to understand how big a share of voice they have in the marketplace, is that in this space, which was in the construction industry, 60% of the share of voice was in video, right?
That's right.
That is and that just totally changed the whole focus of how we were going to think about producing content for this client, right? And it was important. I think it's an important thing to understand where the share of voice is, right?
Yeah.
So you mentioned there wise, used interchangeably, wise content, smart content, but I think you have a more specific meaning for smart content. So tell me what that is.
Yeah. So a couple of years ago, oh gosh, I say a couple of years, and actually what I mean is like 4 or 5 years ago, because time flies so quickly when you're having fun. So about 4 or 5 years ago, we started really recognizing that this was a challenge across our customer base. And so we started developing, new technologies that were largely AI driven, right? And to help, to help our customers, identify and create, new content, that was meaningful for their consumers. And, so we developed a product that we ended up calling BrightEdge Content. And it's taken many evolutions over the last couple of years. But one of the primary components of it is the BrightEdge Content Ideation, right? So it's a smart content ideation technology. And what it does is, it takes a look at our customer's website when it's, deployed, and it'll also take a look at any named competitor websites that the customer gives us. These are our direct competitors. We'll absolutely work that into, kind of the equation. And then we're going to look across our entire index of data. And we're going to work to understand, where in our, where across our customer site are there topics that they're there, but they're not there in a way where there's true, meaningful opportunity to actually perform right now. And so we surface those opportunities that they're just not there, and we need to, really rethink this. And then we look across, their competitor set, and then we look across our wider database, and we aggregate clusters of topics, right? That, we then provide in what we call content briefs, through the platform, to the customer based off of the topics that, are relevant, based off of the existing pages within their site. And we provide them in clusters because obviously the intention of smart content is really to create new, longer form content. So anything from, 300 or so characters or more, right? Not necessarily, this type of technology is not really applied to product pages. It's really applied to, actual informative content. And so then when we go out and we look for what is being served, by Google for this, we're actually also we're going to dedupe out all of the things that might be kind of noise, right? We're not really looking for what Wikipedia is doing, but what we're looking for is what other, leaders from a true content, informative content perspective are doing. And all of that comes into this beautiful brief for the customer to use to inform, okay, this is what's actually working in the landscape really well. This is your universe of related topics, and this is the overall demand of this topic. And with all of these different elements, the customer is actually able to make a really informed decision about what type of content they should be creating that's actually going to create engagement. Mm-hmm. And we're using all these different sources to validate that before it's even delivered as an idea to the customer.
That's great. And I think you also help. I know you help us organize it into topical clusters, right? With that same technology, right?
Yep, absolutely. So there's a couple of different things that we do. There's within different components of the workflow and the technology, but a huge piece of what helps really drive effective decision making is that content clustering.
Yeah, cool. So when we come back, we're going to talk more about BrightEdge and some of the things that you do in automating things.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Are you a conscious co-creator? Are you on a quest to raise your vibration and your consciousness? I'm Sam Leibowitz, your conscious consultant. And on my show, The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, we will touch upon all these topics and more. Listen live at our new time on Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern Time. That's The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, Thursdays, 12 noon on talkradio.nyc.
Are you interested in having a better relationship with yourself, others, and God? Greetings. I'm your host, Dr. George Andow, for the show, A Journey Through into Awareness. On my show, we journey into the awareness that the mind of God is the true seat of our personal consciousness. We join together each Monday at 7 p.m., so tune in on Talk Radio NYC.
Did you know that nearly 1 in 5 adults in the U.S. battles mental illness? Hi, my name is Albert Daba. I'm the host of the show Extra Innings. Extra Innings, I discuss the topics of wellness, mental health, and the experience of surviving multiple suicides within my family. Listen live every Monday at 6 p.m. Eastern to Extra Innings for discussions with sports figures, artists, mental health professionals, and many others. That's Monday at 6 p.m. Eastern on talkradio.nyc.
Hi, I'm Graham Dobbin. Join me every Thursday evening for the Mind Behind Leadership here on talkradio.nyc. We speak to people from business, sport, military and politics, all around what makes it great media. the personal experiences of what's worked and maybe more importantly, what hasn't worked. So that's 7 o'clock every Thursday evening, the Mind Behind Leadership here on talkradio.nyc. Listen to real stories of real leaders.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC. Uplift, educate, empower.
Hello, this is Joseph Franklin McElroy back with the Wise Content Creates Wealth podcast with my guest Jess Nowak of Bright Edge. So, when we're talking about really large sites like enterprise sites, the SEO becomes also and content marketing becomes a problem of scale. I remember when we helped merge all of Starwood's sites into Marriott's, we had to do things like map every URL into new URLs on the new merged sites, and that was an incredibly huge task. Or I think at one point we were having to do 40,000 pieces of content, and so companies that the enterprise really has some problems with things that you would think sort of mundane on an individual basis, but then on small basis, but when you take it to scale, it becomes comprehensive. And one of the exciting prospects that I see for Wise Content is the idea of content automation, how you make content better on the fly, how you make it more optimized, how you create content in response to personalization, AI, all sorts of things. So Bright Edge is taking a big jump into that whole space of automating content with a new product called Bright Edge Autopilot. You want to tell us about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, you're right. There is a huge challenge in the space in terms of scalability. But the other big challenge is there's not a lot that you can really automate without getting in trouble or getting dinged,
yeah.
right? And so, it's always a challenge, but, when we were thinking about helping our customers produce effective content, the other thing that we really had to think about was how do we get this new content seen? How do we help it perform as quickly as possible? And, in kind of looking at what we could do from an automation perspective and kind of assessing, what was kosher, if you will, in the eyes of Google, one of the biggest opportunities that we saw over the years was, our customers' internal linking structure. So one of the first components of Bright Edge Autopilot, and we call it Autopilot because it's self-driving SEO. And so one of the first components of Autopilot is the self-connected pages component. And so this, again, was just an area that we saw a lot of opportunity in because internal linking is cumbersome, to say the least. If you have a large site, it's probably not done very well, and you're probably not updating it very often. It's tedious. And, also in order for it to be really effective from an SEO perspective, you actually have to put some thought into, the anchor text, right, that you're using to link specific pages, the intent of the different pages and how well they actually relate to each other. And so, that's a challenge, on its own. And so what we did was we developed Autopilot, which is a technology that allows us to basically integrate into our customers' content management systems and, apply, strategic internal linking, which is, dynamically updating on a regular basis. But our technology, what it does is it goes in and it basically identifies, the related pages across the site. And it's going to identify related pages, but it's also going to identify the pages, that we call low-hanging fruit, right? Where from a non-branded perspective, they're not actually performing very well, but maybe there's non-branded topics where these pages are performing for on, page 2 of the Google SERP, right? So stuff where, there's going to be some room to grow. And so, we go in and we identify, related pages across the site, and we implement internal links from, pages with high authority, right, that are getting a lot of, equity already. And we just kind of help boost and distribute, page by page, link by link, keyword by keyword, right? That equity across the site, to those pages that are within, striking distance, right? And over time, on an individual basis, each individual link, it's not going to move the needle, right? But over time and at scale, and with the volume, what we start to see is a natural lift that occurs in terms of, non-branded visibility on the first page of the Google SERP. So, it's very effective in terms of, the time savings that it provides, but it also is very effective in terms of, the non-branded, visibility that it provides in a rather short period of time. So, something that would otherwise probably take something like 9 months manually kind of is reduced down to, roughly like a 90-day period, and we actually start to see results right away.
Cool. And you also do something with the images, don't you? I mean, that's
yep.
That's one of it's boring, but it's incredibly important.
It's very boring, but it's very important.
Yeah.
Yeah, our self-enhancing mobile technology, was rolled out early in 2020. And, what that really allows us to do is, similarly plug into our client site and identify, areas of their site that might have images where it might be affecting, load time, right? And so when we think about the mobile experience and we think about, over the last couple of years, there's always this, looming over us, right? The mobile algorithm, what are you going to get hit with? What is the page experience, right? And so self-enhancing mobile, basically, it's always on. It's an always on image optimization, solution to help boost page speed, right? And really improve that experience. We provide roughly about a 30 to 40% compression of images with no visible loss in quality. Right, and the direct impact in terms of on the page lift, right? So about almost 60% average compression size across their images across an entire page, right? And overall, it's going to continue to work and it's going to continue to deliver that. And so, although a little bit different than what the self-connecting pages are able to provide in terms of visible ROI in numbers and driving additional traffic and revenue. What we're able to see here is a visible change in page load time, which we know Google has made it very clear that is something that's absolutely critical to what they want for their user experience, right? And so that is absolutely a ranking factor. And that's something that is on everybody's mind. And again, it's something that can be challenging to do, especially in e-commerce verticals. Especially I think we've seen a lot of value from our e-commerce customers, using that piece of the technology particularly.
Well, isn't May the deadline when Core Web Vitals, which is an initiative by Google to enforce a lot of speed and usability factors to become reality. And this would be, for a large site, this would be sort of maybe a solution for a critical problem that they're facing a big deadline, which is May, right?
That's true. Yeah. So needless to say, our teams are very busy and we're proactively, educating our customer base. But we've been rolling this out for this aspect of Autopilot out for just over a year now. And we've kind of, we're lining up, the customers who need it, the most. But yes, the, Core Web Vitals is absolutely a conversation that we're having with our customers. This is one component, right? Again, there's a lot of different pieces to it, but this is one component where if we can kind of mitigate the amount of time, energy, and effort it takes to take care of this, it really allows our customers and our partners like you to get to the work that really requires, human insight and fine tuning, right? So again, we can't automate everything. We can't automate very much actually from an SEO perspective without getting in trouble, but what can we do that's actually going to be an effective dent?
Yeah. So how many customers do you have on Autopilot? Is it effective?
Yes. So we have about 1,200 customers in the US on Autopilot today. That number's growing every week. And, you know, at the end of the day, it works on every site, right? The question is just how much uplift is it going to get? And that really has to do with how much low-hanging fruit exists on the site. So the larger the site, generally, the larger the, you know, potential ROI is. You know, but, you know, it just depends on what is a meaningful uplift for our customers. You know, and it's something that, you know, we evaluate on an individual site by site basis and make sure that our customers have a very realistic idea of what it can do for them before, you know, obviously going through the process of implementing it. But it's a very light implementation, you know, relative to what I've seen for, you know, other technologies. And yeah, it works every time.
Well, that's good. So, you know, you've mentioned low-hanging fruit a couple of times, and you know, and we use low-hanging fruit in our initial, you know, our initial offering to clients based upon BrightEdge. Can you explain it a bit deeper?
Yeah, absolutely. I know it's a catchphrase, and yeah, striking distance or low-hanging fruit. We love this phrase at BrightEdge. But really, what it represents is what is just below the fold. Right. I think probably more people across the industry are somewhat familiar with the concept of the fold. So you have, you know, what you see visibly, right? When you're in the search engine, right? When you're making a search, what you see right away before you have to start scrolling down. And so below the fold is roughly the second half of page 1 and probably page 2, because nobody really goes much further than that. But if you're there, then that means you have enough authority on a topic where Google is inching you up and you're getting pretty close. You may actually get a click every now and then, but it's not enough to actually generate meaningful traffic. And we want to focus on those areas because, you know, that's where we're going to be able to move the needle. If you're on page 2, we can find a way to, you know, you can find a way to get yourself to page 1, right? With a little bit of work, it's definitely possible. But if you're on page 4, 5, 6, right? Although maybe those might be your BHAG, your big, hairy, audacious goal keywords, right, or topics. Yeah. You know, it's just not really a great use of your time because you have a longer way to go. So low-hanging fruit is really just like what are going to be, you know, the easier opportunities where we can drive more traffic right now.
Yeah, I love that. What happens though is that, you know, when you provide those low-hanging fruits and we go after them, what happens is that a few months later, you then find even better low-hanging.
There's more.
And then tell us how to optimize for that even better.
Always more. That's the wonderful trick, right? There's always more.
Is a beautiful strategy. So when we come back, we're going to talk about another product that you have and then maybe some predictions for the future.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC. Uplift, educate, empower.
Are you a small business trying to navigate the COVID-19 related employment laws? Hello, I'm Eric Sauver, employment law business law attorney and host of the new radio show, Employment Law Today. On my show, we'll have guests to discuss the common employment law challenges business owners are facing during these trying times. Tune in on Tuesday evenings from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern Time on talkradio.nyc.
Howdy, I am Joseph Franklin McElroy, host of the new podcast, Gateway to the Smokies. It airs on talkradio.nyc every Tuesday night from 6 p.m. to 7. Every episode is dedicated to memorable experiences in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park and surrounding areas. This show features experts and locals who expound upon the richness of culture, history, and adventure that awaits you in the Smokies. Tune in every Tuesday from 6 p.m. to 7 on talkradio.nyc.
Do you love or are you intrigued about New York City and its neighborhoods? I'm Jeff Goodman, host of Rediscovering New York, a weekly show that showcases New York's history and its extraordinary neighborhoods. Every Tuesday live at 7 p.m., we focus on a particular neighborhood and explore its history, its vibe, its feel, and its energy. Tune in live every Tuesday at 7 p.m. on talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
This is Joseph Franklin McElroy back with the Wise Content Creates Wealth podcast and my guest, Jess Novak of BRIGHTEDGE. So BRIGHTEDGE is good at finding opportunities. I know that for a fact. So you have a new product, our product called Market Insights. And I think that's built around that. Can you give us some insights on Market Insights?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is a very new product for our technology stack, one that we've been developing, over a long period of time. But really, everything that we talked about in this podcast up until now has been rather granular, right? The opportunities that are at hand, that are kind of in the pipeline for actionability. And, when we think about our largest customers, our largest global customers, and we think about, how search data can really be used to inform decisions across the wider business. This is really a technology that we've built to address, a very specific problem, which is when we're thinking about really large customers, in large corporations, right? Planning cycles are marketing planning cycles, they're getting shorter. And traditional market analysis, it can still take 3 to 6 months to actually execute on. And so, marketers and businesses, they need insights on how their consumers are discovering products and thinking about their brands, and they need to do that faster, right? And so this is kind of taking a step back from the granular aspects of our business, but really looking at the market that a company is serving. So, Market Insights, it extends, the value of search across, the wider, marketing roles of a company and decisions of a company by leveraging the search data to really pinpoint how consumers are making decisions, right? What motivates their purchase, how their preferences are changing over time. And this really allows our customers to create, to produce a higher ROI. And so, it is a very kind of like big picture product, but it's essentially a BI tool, right? So it's a search data BI tool, which is really exciting. And so, kind of in summary, it helps our customers understand their addressable opportunities as quickly as humanly possible, and understand new opportunities as they emerge, right? And also identify shifts in market demand that, that are going to make a large impact in terms of how you're spending your marketing budget, right? We want to be really smart about optimizing our marketing budgets. And, even if we had pre-planned, a content calendar, 6-9 months in advance, but we start to see a shift in the market and shift in the trends of, how our consumers are behaving, we want to be able to respond to that, right? We want to be able to respond to that and actually, course correct in a way that we're going to be maximizing our dollar. And so that's really the big picture idea of, what Market Insights is and who it's for.
Right. I bet you that's had some interesting predictions and things in this year, hasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, across different industries, there's been a lot of really interesting validate, we can make assumptions, right, as people and being consumers ourselves, but it really does help validate shifting market trends across a variety of industries.
So 2020 is over. And all our projections at the beginning of 2020 were useless.
Exactly.
So what does BRIGHTEDGE see as the most important content marketing trends for 2021, and can we rely upon them?
Oh, I don't know what we can rely on these days, but I think we have a pretty good idea of, based off of the patterns, that we've been able to recognize, and, keeping in mind, we have a wonderful customer base of a highly educated, in the digital marketing world, professionals that we are able to ping ideas off of. So a lot of our technology comes and insights actually come from feedback from our wonderful customers. When we kind of look at 2021 and some of the emerging trends, what we see is we think there's going to be a lot of growth in terms of B2B digital marketing, right, and content marketing. It was a sector where we had seen a little bit of growth previously, but now given the loss of other marketing channels like trade shows and events, right? With the B2B community largely had leveraged this, over the years to generate leads, right? Like that was a huge sales channel. And so with obviously, the complete pause in these types of events, in 2020 and, probably a pretty slow roll in getting back to large scale marketing events, at the end of 2021 and into 2022, what we really do believe is going to help drive that B2B content marketing growth are going to be things like webinars, podcasts just like this, right? Affiliate marketing partnerships, right? And leveraging search data, right, to kind of make sure that content is going to be as relevant as possible is going to be critical. But overall, it's going to be, companies that had maybe not, valued, search data in the past are really going to start valuing it.
That's right. Okay, great. So any final words of what digital marketers should remember when creating wise content?
Yeah, it's so important to create engaging content, and it's so important to make sure that it's relevant to your audience, but it is so much more important as well to make sure that content is able to be found. And so, we don't ever want to, give anybody the assumption that content alone will drive, revenue and growth to your site. It is so critical to make sure that your content is properly is probably supported by a good technical underlying, right? So let's make sure that, from a technical SEO perspective, we need to make sure that, we have, the right construction, right? The right navigation, the right markup, the right internal linking strategy, in order to truly allow the content that you put all of this work and energy and love into to perform, right? That is, content marketers, that is your baby, but do not forget that there are some critical components on the back end that need to happen in order to let it, fly free.
All right. Well, Jess, how would people reach out to you or reach out to Bright Edge if they want more information?
Yeah, absolutely. So, we have obviously, brightedge.com, BRIGHTEDGE.com is a great resource. We have lots of case studies and, webinars and content on demand. I am always happy to, field questions and point potential customers in the right direction of different team members across the business that would be good to speak to in terms of different opportunities for different industries. My email, my corporate email is jnowak@brightedge.com. Again, we have a multitude of different teams. I specialize in our agency partners, particularly helping them really grow their businesses. But we have a whole set of solutions teams that cater to retail, to hospitality. And so, we do always want to make sure that our customers are getting the most relevant information to their business.
Yeah, and I'd like to make a testimony, to add my testimony that it's a great relationship to have with the Bright Edge Agency partnership. They do so much for you. So I recommend any agency listening to investigate that. So thank you, Jess, for being on my podcast.
Thank you for having me.
That's great. So my company that works with Bright Edge is Galileo Tech Media. We are the people to call when you need wise content, smart SEO, and editorial link building. We give you the confidence to grow your business and the freedom to scale your team. And you can reach us at GalileoTechMedia.com, and I'm Joseph at GalileoTechMedia.com. You can find out more about this podcast at wisecontentcreateswealth.com. We also have a Facebook page called facebook.com/wisecontentcreateswealth. I'm on the talkradio.nyc network for the live shows. You should investigate the other shows on this network. There are some very interesting and a range of really great topics. I think the one immediately preceding this one is called The Entrepreneurial Web, hosted by Jeremiah Fox. And while it's focused more on the small business, it is totally informative for anybody that wants to find out information about the web that they can take into their personal business and their own business activities. I do have another podcast on this network, and I would like everybody to watch that too. If you're interested in travel, traveling to the mountains is a safe thing to do. And I have a mountain resort in the mountains of North Carolina called the Meadowlark Motel. And I have a podcast called Gateway to the Smokies, where I talk about the things you can do in the Smoky Mountains, the places to stay, and the food to eat, and the things to do. So thank you. Next week will be another episode of Wise Content Creates Wealth. I look for, and we'll have another good tool to discuss, and it should be very interesting. So see you next week. Thank you very much. Bye, Jess.